In this video, we're going to see in detail some of the possibilities offered by the panel for smart devices objects and what makes them so flexible. The most important feature is precisely that the layout is flexible. In fact, when we created this object, we saw that it's completely empty, so the entire implementation is left to the developer. For example, we could use a panel to show information to the user, or for the user to enter information, or even a combination of both options at the same time. We can make complex screens, for example, to create a wizard with several steps. We could use it to create a menu, since it can also be main, and therefore an entry point to our application. We can use it as reusable components. We'll see this in detail in the advanced level. We can use it to show information returned by data providers or REST services. Multiple grids can be implemented, and many other uses that you'll find besides these mentioned here. Let's see an example in GeneXus. In this demo, we're going to see the flexibility offered by the Objects panel for smart devices. We're going to create a panel from scratch, which we'll use to show a list with the topics that have more sessions associated with them. We'll create an object of panel for smart devices type and call it tracks list. As we've already mentioned, the panel is created empty and the entire implementation is left to the developer. We'll use a data provider, getMyTracks, which solves this case. This data provider receives as parameter the number we want to show. With that number, we're going to do a count to only get that number of records. Also, we'll sort the results by an attribute formula, track session count. Let's see how it's defined. It counts the number of active sessions of a topic, but only if that number is different from 9999. Otherwise, it'll be sorted according to the description. This panel will return a collection of track item type. Let's go back to the panel. To show the grid, we'll use a data provider. To do so, we'll create several variables that will allow us to show the data in the grid. Track ID, based on the attribute, and track description, also based on the attribute. Let's go to layout. And here we're going to add a grid. Note that we can use any type of control. And we select the two variables which we've just created. Now, to be able to use a stencil that we already have, we're going to add a table, and we move the variables inside. The stencil that we'll use is track view. Then we'll apply the stencil. We'll search for compatible stencils. We'll type track and click on swap. For the grid, we'll change the control type property. We'll use SD Smart Grid and the auto grow property set to true. We'll also assign it a default action. Select New and enter the view track name for the event. Now we're going to add a table above the grid. And inside the table, we're going to add a text block. We'll change the caption. This is going to be the title. We type Browse by Tracks. And in the class, we'll use text block title widget. We'll add another text block on the right side. We'll call it txt view all. and in the caption, we enter View All. In the class, we'll use text block View All. Let's correct the vertical alignment so that it's shown in the middle and set the horizontal alignment to the right. We'll also place the text block in the middle. Okay, let's create the tap event over this text block. First, let's schedule the refresh event to execute the data provider. Get my tracks. We need to send this data provider the number of topics we want to see. We'll use a variable, and this variable will be received in a parameter. This data provider returns a collection of track item type. We'll assign the result to the tracks list variable of this data type. Track item of collection type, true. Now, in the load event, we run through the collection with the forIn command. And we'll assign the values to the variables track ID from the item. The same for track description that we also retrieve from the item. To show the track color, first, we need to see how the table is called. Track view underscore table bullet. Then we use the class property of this table, and we'll assign a different class to each one. We do this by linking the class name, which is table track bullet, and we'll link the name with the item class ID. We do this because the classes end in 01, 02, and so on. Next, we enter the load command to load the item, and finish. In the event txtViewAll.tap, we'll call the same object TracksList. However, we'll send as parameter the value 9999 so that it doesn't filter the number of results. In the ViewTrack event, we'll call the session list panel that we've already prepared. Let's see it. The panel shows a title and a grid with the sessions. This panel receives 3 parameters: a date, a track ID, which is what we need, and a flag, to indicate whether it's a keynote or not. We'll use it precisely to filter by track ID. Let's see the events. In the refresh event, we capture first the device ID using an API, and then call a data provider that returns a list of sessions filtered by topic. For this reason, we send as parameter the device ID, the track ID we need, and the date. Note that whenever we use a grid based on a collection, the right thing to do is to call the data provider in the refresh event, which is executed before the load event, and then in the load event, we run through the collection. In the load event, we run through the collection, we assign the values to the grid variables, and configure other controls once the load command is finished. In the client start event, we configure the title. In the tap event over the favorites icon, we call a process that marks or clears the session as favorite as appropriate. Look at this process. Note that here we use a business component to insert or update the user's favorite selection. This panel returns the business component messages. However, note that we don't send it as a parameter. This is something that's solved only for this parameter, when it's the last one, and we're in an event on the client side. It's the composite command that will be in charge of showing the messages if necessary. At the end of the event, a refresh is made, so that we can see the change in the icon. Otherwise, we wouldn't see it. Lastly, we have a view session event to access the session's details. Here we call the view of the work with we already know. We return to the tracks list. We enter the call to sessions list. We'll send it the parameters, session initial date, track ID, and the false value so that it doesn't filter those that are keynotes. We'll call this panel inside another one. Let's see how we do this. We're going to use a panel that we'd already created, Today panel, and we'll add a component. These controls are similar to the web components used on the web. Let's see it. We drag component below the image, and in the properties, in the object, we select Tracks List. And as a parameter, we'll pass 5. This is the number of topics we want to show in this panel. We had said that we could run a panel as if it were a menu. So, let's configure the panel to be main. Now we can see the properties of the main objects and the Android properties as we had seen them in the object menu for smart devices. We'll run this application. We could set it as startup object, but we'll use the run option. Alright, let's go to the emulator. Now we see the tracks. Here we will only see the 5 topics with more associated sessions. We'll tap on the first one, and it has 4 sessions. And we can mark one as favorite. To do so, we tap on the icon. Alright, we go back, and we access another topic. This one only has 2 sessions. Let's mark one more as a favorite. Okay, now let's look at the link, All Topics. Here, we'll even see some that don't have sessions. For example, Research and Development. Why are they displayed here if they don't have any sessions? Let's see the navigation list of the data provider that obtains this data. Note that the base table is track, instead of the session track table. For this reason, all topics are displayed, and not only those that have a given session. Now let's add another panel, Speakers List. We've already seen this panel several times. The difference is that now it receives a variable, isKeynote, to filter in the grid. And if we want to, filter only those speakers which are keynote speakers when this variable is true. So, we're going to add it to Today panel. We add another component, leave it on top of the previous one. We select the Speakers List object and set it to True in the parameter, because we only want to show the keynote speakers. We save, and we'll select Run again. Well, now we see this other component, which shows us the main speakers. Throughout the course, we'll be developing other panels to complete the application, and we'll see other uses of the panels as we introduce other topics. With this, we conclude the topic Panels for Smart Devices. In the next video, we'll begin to talk about integration through APIs.